the majority were being held in prisons. And I was asked to visit detainees, and I visited many thousands of them, and 90% of them were under the age of 18, because these were the people that the security police were getting off the streets, because they were following a policy that was adopted by the African National Congress in exile of making South Africa ungovernable, particularly in the black townships, and they recruited children to burn tires in the streets, to break windows of all government buildings, including schools. And I came into contact in prisons and police cells with a lot of kids. Some at the age, some as young as 11. There was one 11-year-old kid I remember visiting in a large prison. And under the law, the juveniles had to be kept separately. They couldn't be kept in the same cells as adults. And the only place they could find for 3 kids aged 11 and 12 was in the prison hospital. So I visited this 11-year-old there. And, I made inquiries subsequently. His parents couldn't control him. He refused to go to school. He was undisciplined. He was breaking windows and what they eventually kicked him out of home. I went to visit him, 11-year-old. He could have been 20. His maturity was quite startling, articulate. And I said to him, "Have you got any complaint?" I said, "I'm a Supreme Court Justice and I'm visiting. I'm not responsible for your being here, but I'm here because I'm concerned about the way you're being treated and the way you're being kept." I said, "Have you got any complaints?" He said, "You bet I've got a complaint." I thought he wanted his parents, or he wanted better food, or wanted clothes. I said, "What's your complaint?" I only got one complaint. He said, "They're keeping me away from my comrades because I'm only 11. His only complaint was that he wanted to be in the cells with his leaders, with the people he considered his leaders. And I think when one's talking about this issue, the thing that the most important aspect in my book are the conditions in those societies that produce monsters, turned children, ordinary children, the sort of children David was talking about, who would be normal kids in a normal situation and want the things that most kids want. Right. But a situation of desperation changes it. I found a similar syndrome in Gaza. I remember having dinner with a psychiatrist in Gaza City at his very pleasant home. And he said to me during the course of conversation that he was very disturbed. He said he's got a very intelligent 12-year-old boy who he said came home from school and said to his father that he and his friends were having a discussion. And he said things are so desperate. We see no light in the end of the tunnel, and we think we could become suicide bombers. Wow. And he said here's an intelligent kid who had all the aspirations. And he said, as a psychiatrist and a father, you can imagine how I feel about my son coming home and telling this. He said, "I hope he's not serious," but he said it in a way that makes me very disturbed.
Yeah, I wanted to follow on what Richard said because it begins to complicate the story, and it's very important. The UN report that was mentioned in 1999 was written by Graça Machel, who had been the wife of the president of Mozambique. Technologically, why children are not just in the back lines sending messages or cooking or anything like that, but they're now in the front lines of combat. And it's because we have become so efficient in making guns light that children can now carry them. And that's only a phenomenon in the last 15 years. They're making them with the same kind of metals, aluminums, or whatever, that are so light that children can put them on their shoulders without harm. Whereas in the past, weapons were so heavy that children could not be put into that particular place, even though they might have been doing support things in combat situations. And so that's why they end up committing atrocities, because they now have the weapons to do it, where child combatants did not, say, 12 years ago.
Well, if I could just, I'm pleased we're sort of broadening the topic and not only talking about child soldiers, but the effect of violence and evil systems on children. What Diane says reminds me, I read a statistic, I don't remember the exact figure, but there were some tens of thousands of homes in Rwanda where the oldest member of the family was 16. Tens of thousands where their parents and elders had been killed in the genocide. I mean, you can imagine how long it takes, decades for a society like that to recover.
Same in Cambodia. It's a very, very young country because a quarter of the population, was killed within 3 years.
Just a footnote, the greatest weapon of mass destruction in our modern history, and more people as a result of it, is the AK-47. In all wars combined, the AK-47 is, and nuclear weapons, the AK-47 trumps by millions the number of people who've been killed directly by that particular weapon.
What in your view is the motivation of leaders recruiting child soldiers? I mean, there are a number of possible reasons. The one is simply manpower or woman power, as the case may be. The other is it's a way of destroying the society on the other side. But you had it with the Lord Resistance Army, kidnapping kids and forcing them to become soldiers. Why does it happen in Sierra Leone? There must be a reason. Well, I mean, it happened in Sierra Leone. It didn't happen in Rwanda.
There was some on the RPF side.
Yeah, but not to the same
No.
extent.
There was, and the perpetrator side of the genocidal forces, it wasn't an issue.
And there it was more the phenomenon Diane was describing too, I think. It wasn't forced recruitment. It was young Tutsi boys wanting to,
Couldn't wait.
Yeah, and Diane did bring up a good point, but I don't get the illusion that because you only live to be 30, therefore when you're 15 you're an adult, and therefore you can do, the 30 thing is because there was nothing, the conditions were so horrific, that's just the natural lifespan of a Sierra Leonean. But the motives are many. I recall listening to a witness who stated that he was told that when he goes into Sierra Leone during the invasion, that if they do not volunteer the force, then you recruit them forcibly. If they don't do that, then you kill them. And it was done for manpower purposes. It was done for subjugation, but also terror purposes. They were all charged with that, terrorism, to terrorize the countryside with these crazed monsters running amok through the countryside with no, they were organized, but they had one motive, and that was to rape, maim, mutilate, and kill. And that's just pure terror. So there are many motivations. Strangely enough now in West Africa, they are a commodity now. They are still used illegally and surreptitiously. But child soldiers are traded. This is all they know how to do, and so this is what they prefer to do, and this is the only way they can make any kind of cash. And so they're moved about various portions of Africa to continue what they've always known, what they recruited back when they were 6 or 7 years old. So the answer to your question is yes, and yes, actually.
I'm just making the point that we make gradations, and we've had lots already in our discussion. You see, sometimes we're talking about the 16-year-old combatant, and sometimes we're talking about the 8-year-old, and they're not the same.
Yeah,
They're different, and the argument about the freedom fighter syndrome that Graca Machel is leaving space for, I don't think she's going to want to have an 8-year-old freedom fighter. But 15-year-old freedom fighter, she wants to leave a little space for that.
But you see Rwanda, you see Rwanda though, is a different story. Why? Because of the impact, the moral impact, the political impact as well of the genocide, and the fact that it was allowed to happen. Essentially, I think forced the international community for millions of dollars in that country, even 15 years. And what 40% of the budget, I think, or 50% is still foreign aid in Rwanda, if not more. So it had allowed for a rebuilding of society that that didn't happen in Sierra Leone because. I have to remember what I do for a living.
We're not going to analyze Sierra Leone.
I was just going to add that I think looking on the brighter side in some societies, if the societies recover and some sort of normality comes back into society, people can recover pretty quickly.